This is hands down the most important skill you will ever learn in your entire life. And I'm not going to teach you it because I'm not some sort of coach or specialist for this skill, but because I now know people in my life that are specialized in this skill and in this area. That's how I am now working on this skill and improving it. And it's quite funny actually that this is such a multifaceted skill and it's a multifaceted area of our lives that actually we're learning it from the moment we're born, really, but we kind of subconsciously improve this skill. And for most people, they never truly master it. It is a kind of lifelong endeavor of mastering this skill. But until you are faced with someone that has dedicated their time and effort to master the areas of this skill, and then you talk with them or sit down with them, you don't actually realize how much you don't know about the skill. Now, I think the crazy thing for me has been that exact thing. You don't realize how much you don't know about it. Even though it's such an everyday part of our lives, we don't realize how much we suck at this skill, basically. So, this is communication. And again, it's one of those multifaceted areas of our lives that we don't even really think about. We say communication, or everyone always emphasizes communication, 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 like it's Beetlejuice. But we emphasize the importance of it, and then we don't actually focus on it, or we don't actually put the effort into them working on it. And normally when you say communication, it's like, oh, we need to be communicating. That normally just means we need to be prompt and swift with getting words across. And that's the typical thought process and reaction to we need to communicate. Just typically messaging back and forth. If you have a problem, let me know. If you have a solution, let me know. And it's just being interactive and actually getting messages across swiftly and without making mistakes, just like that. That's what most people see with like communication. Whereas there's a communication problem here, they immediately think of that. And yet communication is so much more than that. It's, again, a multifaceted area of our lives. It's not just what we say, it's not just how we talk, it's how we present ourselves. It's how we react to certain things. It's how we do gestures. It's how we have our posture, whether it's small and closed, or whether it's big and out and presenting. It's such a multifaceted area that most people don't actually realize what communication really is. And I didn't realize how big communication really was until this past year when a close friend of mine started studying it and practicing it, and actually teaching it. And you don't realize how much you don't know about something until you start going down rabbit holes about it, and then you're getting taught about how invaluable this skill is. So I think one of the first things I want to cover with this, and obviously I'm not a communication specialist, so I'm talking about my own journey in learning more about communication and improving my communication skills. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this very, very briefly in probably my first video like last week, or whenever it was, whenever you're watching this. And I will probably make an in-depth video about this anyway. But I lacked one particular area of communication my entire life, and that was accountability. And that was very much, at least from my own discovery of basically myself so far, having allowed, basically, I chose this to happen, whether I like it, I'm proud of it or not. I chose to not be accountable and not own my decisions again and again in my life, especially in recent years. And it cropped up very recently in my life. And so accountability has probably been the biggest part of communication for me, in simply choosing the comfort of the validation and people pleasing, even though I am literally falling into my own lie, basically, for the most part. So that's why accountability for me, and just biting the bullet when it comes to being truthful and being myself, has been my biggest lesson in communication. And actually, just at the moment, there is a problem, not being avoidant of conflict and dealing with the point and the problem then and there and getting it solved. And in terms of leadership and just management, that's the most important skill, I think. And it's obviously what a lot of people lack at the beginning. And it's natural to an extent. However much we can say it's natural, we still shouldn't allow it, and we should always be all trying to work on it. Again, I'm not going to try and act like I'm on a high horse with this because, again, learning my own accountability issues here and wanting to share this message about the importance of communication as a whole. And we all have our own problems as humans when it comes to communication issues in multiple areas. And I think for me, it's been such an important lesson over these past few years, actually. I've let people down. Before I was working with clients, I let friends down with working with them, with filming. And it's also been a big learning curve and a big opportunity to grow because I've learned a lot about how, I've realized over these past few years, and especially this past year, that I could not be doing what I'm doing now on a weekly basis and nearly daily basis a few years ago because of accountability, because of being open, honest, and swift when it comes to communication and opening up about a problem. Because 3-4 years ago, like pre-2021, pre-2020 me, I was not an accountable person, and I chose avoiding conflict over the truth sometimes, whether it was a big thing or a small thing, whether it was just a filming problem and it was where's an Allen key in a pocket of a backpack when I'm trying to put a piece of camera equipment together, or if it was simply about my whereabouts or the absence from a filming day, whatever it might be, big or small, I chose conflict avoidance over getting to the solution as quickly as possible, even if I was the problem and there wasn't an external problem that I was responsible for. Responsible for myself for that thing. So I learned a lot over the past year of how much I have had to grow and clearly grown, because it would be physically impossible for me to be in the position I'm in right now as a leader to an extent of people, to be able to take charge of projects, make sure that things are being handled, make sure that everyone is on top of everything so that things are running smoothly. Now, I don't want to act like I'm in charge of tens or hundreds of people, by no means. I am not a experienced manager of people. There's just a few people that I am making sure that things are working smoothly with and stuff gets delivered on time. That's the extent of my management experience and leadership experience. So that's been the biggest lesson for me over the past few years, is that realization of, actually, yes, there has been accountability issues in the past, but I am learning from them, and I have learned a lot so far, but I'm aware I'm at the very beginning of my journey. So that's my end of it. And this may be an area as well for other people. So I guess anyway, this is kind of like a micro section of where I'll dive into in the future of the video, more about my own issues. But generally with communication, there are so many areas to it that maybe accountability is one for you, maybe people pleasing and conflict avoidance might be one for you. I think conflict avoidance is such a big thing when it comes to communication for most people, and it's what most people think of. Communication and problems, whether it's work, whether it's with family or friends, it's always just that, that you want to nip that thing in the bud and you just want to not deal with it or deal with it. Some people want to deal with it, some people don't, and that's why communication is a big problem there. And I've been a part of that problem before, and I'll always own up to that, and I'll always do my best to always own up to that now and from now on, and wish I had in the past, but work on what I can work on from now on. So I think with communication in general, the things we need to be aware of, and I just kind of want to touch on a few points I'm learning right now, because again, I'm no communication coach trying to say, here's what you should do, and this, and that. I just really want to express the importance of realizing where you might lack communication skills and where you can grow from wherever you are now in your understanding, because it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. And it's one of those areas where, because you don't know what you don't know, there's so many subconscious things that you do without realizing. And now maybe going through this, I'll bring some things up that you'll just think, oh, I say that a lot, or I do that a lot. So some of the first subtle things I will dive into, I think, is actually realizing how many filler words we use and just general punctuation and wording we use in verbal communication that is completely unnecessary. And this is also confidence issues, just anxiety issues to do with confidence, people pleasing, whatever it might be. But filler words in all these parts of verbal communication that are unnecessary and we don't even realize we're doing. And obviously, maybe let's say the older generation have a pet peeve with the younger generation would say how many times they use the word like or basically or you know what I mean, something like that. There'll always be those pet peeves, and this is part of it, but it can do with things like and ahs, and goes into filler words with things like basically and like and like that and basically there, and obviously connecting words like therefore and nevertheless. Those are good ones, but we have ones that we do use unnecessarily. I mean, the amount of people that will say I mean or like or basically, like those examples. So I think a great exercise for anyone to do is listen to a recording of yourself or listen to just you in a conversation and and think about how many times you use filler words that don't have any relevance to the conversation. They don't add to the next sentence. They don't fill the gap or transition it. Normally because we use these to try and transition because we're just not sure of what's happening, or we say something like just to connect two sentences together. So think about times when you say just, I mean, like, basically, so, and it's things like that that connect dots that we are so unaware of in our conversation that have such a big effect. And I realized how it's around different people that you can have this effect on, because certainly when I'm talking to my close friend of mine that is a communications coach, I realize how I naturally have started to try and talk as well as possible, basically, and actually grow my communication skills around them. And it's really interesting to actually try and notice when you're doing it and when you're not doing it. And obviously, it's great to be able to do this with friends and with family. If you are trying to work on this and not use unnecessary filler words and gaps and pauses so much unnecessarily, then it's a really good lesson and opportunity to just learn and try and grow from that. Yeah, I even use some filler words there. I'm trying my best to not use filler words right now as well. It's hilarious. But anyway, I think filler words and ums and ahs are the biggest thing. You know what I mean? Just like basically are. So anyway, and then it's they all connect, and it's just identifying them and kind of making a habit of when you catch yourself, and then you'll be in a situation where you're saying things, and it's like just oh, or you'll say half the word, or you'll say the first letter, and you'll go basically oh, and then you'll catch yourself. So that's really interesting. Kind of is another one. That's an interesting subject to do and an interesting practice you can do with yourself, with friends, with family, with recordings, and catch yourself in it and see if over time you can improve. And in the end, it'll be something where you will recognize other people doing it. It's like the red car theory of if you start thinking of red cars and you're driving or you're in on a public transport, whatever, you'll start seeing red cars. If you think of a car that you like or whatever, or you're looking to buy, you'll start seeing them everywhere. And maybe in a color you like or something. So it's that exact same thing. Once you start thinking about it more, you'll start seeing it because you're identified with that thing more. And then the next thing I would say that's been a massive thing for me is non-verbal communication. And this is as simple as it gets, really. This has helped me with my confidence issues, with social anxiety, and just general confidence outside of my home, basically. So the biggest thing is being open and being out. And if you do have nerves, if you have dealt with social anxiety, take this in slow steps and a slow process. So begin with just a couple of people, begin and then lead it on to maybe a small group of friends, a big group of friends, then go out with a small group of friends, then go out with a big group of friends. You know, it's like it's called exposure therapy. So you slowly add it. So you start if you are a really socially anxious person, you're only by your console or you're only by your laptop or whatever, or by your PC, start with just a friend in a room. Then do it with a small group of people in the room. Then go to a cafe or a bar and just have two of you or three of you. And then you slowly up the ante until you're able to be with a big group of friends outside and you're enjoying yourself. And for me, one of the big things I had was, say, in a public area or in a cafe or a bar or a restaurant or even with friends. I know you can't really see where I'm sitting right now, but I would have my legs crossed, my arms crossed, and generally just closed posture. And I even look small in just this frame right now, but I would be closed. My arms would be crossed, and you wouldn't be able to see me, and it would just be small and closed in. And this is a natural thing with social anxiety, as well, generalized social anxiety. If you've got clinical, obviously mental health, um, like diagnoses, then obviously that's a separate issue. But generally, for people that have suffered with confidence issues and you've closed in, then the biggest confidence booster for me has been simply changing my posture. And it has been in a restaurant with a friend a few months ago. Literally, I was closed in, my arms were like closed, or my hands were on the table, just like leaning on the table like you do, and it's just closed in. And obviously, I also talk quite quietly as well. Obviously, you might not notice here because I've got a mic like here. It's just you can hear it right there. So I'm relatively close, and I'm also talking quite loudly because there's no one with me. There's no one to hear me or whatever. But normally, when I'm talking to someone, I'm probably talking like this, and it's normally it'll be like talking like this distance. It's normally a lot harder to hear, and you can't really hear it that well. When normally, when I'm friends or by myself especially, I'm talking like this, and it's louder, and people could hear me across the room if they needed to. So talking and projecting your voice is a big thing, especially if you're physically small and you don't have that help normally that you have experienced. But the posture is such a big thing. I know I'm going into a big rabbit hole with communication skills here and growth things, but the posture and your openness is a massive part, especially if you've dealt with confidence issues. So, yes, like I said, it's like for me, I was practicing going from small and closed in, and then like with many problems, it's always that initial first hurdle. When you cross the first hurdle, as soon as you do it, you're in it. It's like social scenario. If you're anxious, you're nervous, worried about confronting someone or going up to someone to greet yourself or introduce yourself or just say hi, doing it that's it. You just got to do it. And it's like the night quote, just do it. Literally going up to them is the biggest, that's the first hurdle. So with this, literally just opening your body posture out and just being open, not being closed off, crossed armed, being open, having your arms out. And if you don't have a reason for your arms to be out, just put them on your sides of your hips, or it's just putting them in your pockets or just by your sides. Get comfortable with your hands just being by your sides and not being anywhere. Or sometimes feeling not confident enough, you just like want to hold a drink or something if you're somewhere at a bar or whatever. But generally, it's getting used to having that open posture, and in a public or social place which isn't just your home is a big thing. So that's been one of my biggest things, is being able to not be closed off in a public area and not have my arms crossed, but actually be open and be out. I've got a wide spread on my legs right now. I'm not like crossing them or anything, or like putting one leg over the other or whatever. It's just open posture. So that's big non-verbal things, is your posture and how open you are. And there's probably the two areas that I've been trying to focus on the most when it comes to, well, the verbal with filler words and learning pauses as well. I'll get into that in maybe just a second, maybe, and with the posture and everything like that. So generally, those are two big areas for me that I've been working on when it comes to communication, is the verbal a little bit, the non-verbal a lot with my posture, and obviously the accountability part with, because it's not necessarily a obvious part of conflict avoidance. Sorry, it's not an obvious part of communication. You'd think when it comes to communication, most people just think of it's just let's sort this out. So, or we want to be open and just actually talk basically. And then that's normally a big thing with communication. So for me, it's not necessarily been just expressing the problem, it's been avoiding the conflict of expressing the problem. So, yeah, that's one big area for me. And obviously, the non-physical, the non-verbal, sorry, the physical, the posture and everything is a big part. So, if that's a big one for you, then just work on open postures. Obviously, if the accountability and the kind of conflict avoidance side of the messaging side of communication is a big thing for you, then obviously focus on that as well. And I think it's just the biggest thing with all of these areas is attack it as soon as you can, because As soon as there is a problem, boom, attack it as soon as you can. And I will probably have memes made out of this by my close friends because I've made a video about it. So feel free to, yeah, take this and go with it. But there we go. So yeah, I've covered obviously the big thing with accountability, conflict avoidance, and obviously being authentic and truthful about that. Obviously the filler words and gaps and ums and ahs and filler words, and therefore like basically just I mean, so all those and then ums and ahs. Then there's also kind of what comes with the confidence of posture and the confidence with the filler words. Then comes the second part, which is the confidence to be able to be comfortable with pausing and comfortable with saying certain things once you learn different techniques with communication. So, again, one of the biggest things with communication is the confidence to be comfortable with pauses, just like this. Because pauses have a massive effect. Most people aren't confident enough to be comfortable with a pause, because most people will only do it if they're mad with someone, or if there's a certain emotional in a mood they're in, or a certain feeling they've got. They want to emphasize a point, and that's how they emphasize it. Because most people, especially in a kind of happy state or in a positive state, most people don't have a pause because they know it emphasizes a point, like we're done, or is that enough? And then it's a pause. And that's most people just don't want to do that because it's a kind of conflict and you're not confident enough to do it. Whereas we can actually use that for anything we need. It's used in negotiations, it's used in deals. It's, again, one of the most important things when it comes to just non-verbal and verbal communication, and the confidence to be able to do that in a kind of negotiation situation, or to be able to get your point across, or to be able to express the maybe how you're feeling in general. You could use it for positive or for negative, and I'll try and give some examples. So for the positive, it could be, I'm so grateful for this opportunity. You have no idea. And then it's just most people aren't used to pauses at all, especially even in professional scenarios. A lot of the time people aren't used to it because they're not trying to study it a lot. So when you say, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, you have no idea, just thank you again. People might even feel a little unnerved about it because it's different, but you can express the positive or the negative. And like the negative I just did just now was an example of what most people do with a pause. It is what are you doing? Literally what's going on right now. And then that's a negative kind of pause. And they really have a massive effect on whoever you're talking to, or whoever you're in a deal or negotiation with, or in an argument with. People most likely pause, and you'll be most aware of it in arguments, in discussions, in debates, because normally it's to emphasize a point that they want to try to get across, or they're trying to get into the other person's head. It'll be, what are you even doing right now? Or do you understand what this means? Because they're trying to wait for the person's response. And so they're really powerful pauses, because we're so used to only normally doing them in a negative, that if you can do them in any way, then it's amazing. Like if you're trying to get a deal, it would be something like, I'm using filler words myself, trying not to, like with it would be something like, are we prepared to move forward with this? And because you're so comfortable being in the pause, it adds so much weight to the end of it there. And I also added a use of tone there as well. And tones are another big thing I'll go into in just a second. The weight of the pause, it adds such a weight to what you're saying with the pause. And often in big negotiations and things, the longer you can pause, or understanding the difference between a short pause and a long pause, has a big effect. Because a lot of people don't have the confidence or feel it's even necessary to pause for that long. So if you're maybe in a deal and you're saying, is this the best you can do? And they might not know what to say, but you're willing to hold this pause because you know your position in this deal. Now let's go on to tones real quick, because I know I don't want to make this like a 50-minute video or anything, and I'm nearly at like 5 minutes. But tone's probably the last one I'll talk about. And I might go on to mirroring and labeling in the end, but I want to talk on tone for a minute, because what I've done with a couple of those pauses was tone. And what I did just there was tone. Now, tone has a bunch of different things, and it's mainly used in negotiations with sales and whatever it might be, but you can use tone in all parts of life, just like there. And we do naturally do it to a certain extent to emphasize our emotional, like we're doing it regardless of anything, but we will often do it without thinking about it just because of the emotional state we're in and the mood we're in. If someone is trying to get their point across in an argument, they'll be like, well, I don't know what's going on. And then the physical will change, and then it'll go up or they'll go down. And then if someone's moody, they'll be, I don't know. So tone has a massive effect. Now, when we understand how to use it, we can use it to our advantage. We can use it to try and win over a negotiation or win a deal or whatever it might be in a sales situation. For example, I've done cold calls in the past, and I've done like less than a few hundred in my life, so I can't say I'm a cold caller by any means or a good salesperson. But I've seen like amazing salesmen before, and salespeople they say, "Well, would you be opposed to moving forward today?" And they're saying it in a kind of curious tone, and the curious tone there, and obviously the pause at the end, allows the person to not feel so in shock by it. Obviously, they've just said a type of question there, which I might get onto in this video, but maybe in the future. But they've said, would you be opposed to moving forward today? And they've said it in a way that's curious because they're just asking, but they also said, are you opposed to it? So naturally in a sales call, most people don't want to say yes to something because they've got their guard up. So if you ask a no-based question, they're more likely to, oh, well, no, I'm not opposed to it, no. So with the pause there, obviously, and with the tone, by just having that curious tone and going up at the end, you really kind of make them not feel so on edge about it. So if I said if I was monotone about it, would you be opposed to moving forward today? It's not the same as would you be opposed to moving forward today? It's got a difference to it. Now, some people may think you're kind of faking it because they've just not heard it before, but it does depend on the person. I'd say 95% of the time, 99% of the time even, people just it just affects their emotional reaction because it's rare for them to hear it, so they actually will, it will go as you plan it to go. So that's what works amazingly. But in terms of other tones, the biggest thing, like I said, is that it most likely applies. Most people are doing these forms of communication just without realizing it and based on the emotional state or mood they're in. Like I said, people will be in a moody state, I don't know, and it's down. Or they'll be, well, I don't know what's going on. And then it goes up because they just, I don't know, I've got no control of the situation because it's not my fault. And it normally works like that. Whereas we can use it to our advantage in negotiations and any regular communication situation. So that's tone. Again, you've got curious tone, which is, are you sure? Are you sure about that? And then challenging is, well, are you sure? It's curious and challenging are very close to me anyway. And I'm still learning a lot about that. But I noticed that challenging is almost more of an assertive curiosity. Curious is, are you sure about that? Whereas challenging is, are you sure about that? And it's still semi-curious to me. It's just kind of like it's like a kind of an assertive curious to me. But there is a difference if you hear the right person say it anyway, an experienced salesperson or whatever it might be. Then you've got other tones, which I can't remember off the top of my head, and maybe they'll come to me in a second, but there's so many various tones that have such a big effect on the person you're talking to. And I think for me, the curious and the challenging tone, and I suppose there's kind of like the dominant deep tone that is mainly for negotiations and deals when you're trying to, you know your place and this is your end of the deal. You're not going to go down, and it's like, this isn't going to happen that way, or it's, it's 250, that's it. And then you might use pauses, you might use other tones at the same time, and you might end with that. But the use of pauses and tones in a deal or in communication is such a powerful thing, as you've seen over these past 5-10 minutes. So I think that's the main thing. Yeah, obviously you've seen, I talked about accountability at the beginning. Obviously, like the non-verbal things with the posture is a big thing. Confidence issues, I hope that helped as well. It's helped me, and it's been helping me a lot. Helped me tons. Obviously, the ums and ahs and filler words, like I said, and obviously going into pauses, and then with the types of tones you have. Be sure to look all this up as well. It's such powerful stuff as well. And then I guess I will end quickly with mirrors, labels, and maybe types of questions, just to make this a full video about the basics of communication anyway. So mirrors are another part of communication. Again, I'd say pauses, tones, mirrors, and labels are kind of the four pillars when it comes to sales and deals and things like that. But they can be used in everyday parts of life. They're used to kind of, in psychology, to just kind of engage the interest of somebody else. It's kind of how to win friends and influence people. Reciprocity. It's mirroring, labeling, appeal to their interests, this type of thing. So with mirrors, with we've used obviously tones so far. We've used pauses. Getting rid of the filler words will just help you with this anyway. But obviously, these techniques can kind of negate the filler words if you do end up cropping up in conversation. But generally, now going into mirrors and labels. So mirrors are when you can non-verbally mirror people as well. If you're at a social gathering, whatever it might be, if someone crosses their hand or this, if someone starts doing this, you basically physically mirror them, and that can help as well. But mirroring is when you, in conversation with someone or in a negotiation, mirror the last 1 to 3 words typically of what they've said. So it might be if it's a conversation, you're getting to know someone, you'll say, "Oh, so how was the dinner? How was the dinner the other day?" And I go, "Oh, it was great. Yeah, Simon and Bill came over, but it was a lot of fun. But it was Kelsey wasn't there, or this John wasn't there, so he was busy yesterday." And you go, "He was busy yesterday." And then depending on the tone you say it, you would say that type of thing in a curious tone as well. You go, "He was busy yesterday," or busy. He was busy yesterday, and you obviously make it make sense. If the last 3 or so words don't sound right, like busy yesterday, you can obviously say he was busy yesterday. Use common sense to make that work. But when you use the last few words, it obviously shows that you're listening because you've repeated some of their words back to them. But then it engages with what they've just said, and then it just re-emphasizes your listening, and then they continue to go into the story that they were just explaining to you. And naturally, people don't really consciously think about this or aware of this, but this kind of engages the kind of, this person cares about me, and they like me kind of thing. And that's kind of appealing to someone's interest kind of thing. Then you've got labeling, which is kind of another layer to that, which again I would say works more in deals and negotiations, but you could use it in a kind of social environment, which is saying things like "you seem like," "you feel like," "it sounds like." And it's just basically read however they sound or whatever emotion they come across with, you label that. So if they're really happy and jolly, and you might say, "You seem really excited about this," or "You seem really happy about this." Like if you've been, say you're at a business event and you bump into an old colleague and they tell you about their promotion at work, and you go, and they say, "Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, I've been promoted from senior vice president to vice president." And you're like, "Oh, that's fun." And you go, "Vice president?" And you go, "Yeah, I know, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's such a great role at the moment. I get my salary of 75K plus a 25K performance bonus every quarter." And you go, and then you might say, "This sounds really exciting." You say, "You seem really excited about it." And then in that, you've done a mirror at the beginning, which is, you said vice president. Then you've got the label, which is you seem really excited about that. And then this is just, again, unconscious things to people that are listening, but it shows that you are interested in what they're saying, even though you've literally only repeated the last words they've said back to them, and then labeled what they're feeling and how they've expressed what they're feeling anyway. And it is amazing if, when you practice this and use it in person, how you come across to the person and how you make them feel. And it's fantastic. And it's kind of some of the basics of how to win friends and influence people, and appeal to people's interests so that you can benefit them and help them in their lives anyway. And it's why it's a big part of negotiations and deals in business, because it's all about appealing to someone's interests, because ultimately you want to help them. And it's interesting, actually, there's a book called 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, which dives into some of this, not so much the communication side of it, but just generally kind of the human nature and psychology of all of this, and why this is all the way it works in human nature. And there's some darker sides to it, depending on how on the kind of ethical sides you sit of life, but it's interesting how different people can perceive all this. And generally, when you think about it in use for good, and obviously for both parties to win a negotiation or whatever, and both parties to get the best outcome, or in a social situation for you to both become friends, it's fantastic, and it's amazing skill. So anyway, it's nearly a 35-minute video. Obviously, that's mirrors and labels, so don't forget mirrors. the last 1 to 3 words roughly, or if they don't work, then it's a couple of words they said that were prominent. Like, if it's the promotion again, 24K bonus, and you go, yeah, 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 it's amazing. Or they'll label them, how it makes them feel. You seem really excited about that. You seem amazed. Or you're like, you seem really excited, or it sounds really good. And then again, labeling the emotion. You seem great. You seem really excited, and it comes across really well. So I think the last one I want to end on for the last few minutes, hopefully, and make this less than 40-minute video, is the types of questions you can ask. And really here, the big thing is used in sales situations a lot, but it can be used anywhere. Sales negotiations and things, or sales and negotiations are very similar things. But what typically happens here is a few types of questions, and you can have things like no-based questions, which I used an example earlier, which is, would you be against? Would you be opposed? Because in a sales situation and negotiation, you are trying to lower the guard to make someone, trying to appeal to someone's interest and make them want to buy from you or make them accept your deal. So most people have their guard up and don't want to say yes to anything because survival instinct, guard up. So the way you lower the guard is, obviously you might use like a curious tone to get into conversation, ask a couple of questions, but then you say something like, oh, hey, I just had a couple of questions. I didn't mind, maybe not like that, but hey, I just wondered if you had a couple of minutes to talk about a couple of questions. Would you be opposed to talking about them? And then you've been curious. It's a no-based question because it's would you be against or would you be opposed to? So that way they have to go, I wouldn't be opposed to that. And then that gets you in the conversation. And then this is also how you can end deals as well. With a no-based question, you don't go, are you ready to move forward? They might not be ready to move forward. They might still have objections. But when you say, you opposed to moving forward today? Or would you be against moving forward with this? You go, well, I wouldn't be against it. No. And you go, great. Well, let's work out how we can do it. Let's move forward with this. And it's just one of the biggest things, I think, is types of questions. And obviously, I have qualifying questions and things like that anyway. There's many different types of questions, but I just kind of really wanted to cover the surface because I realized I went into a few of the details on each type of communications, techniques, and skills you can use within communication skills. So yeah, you've got no-based questions like that. Would you be opposed to? Would you be against? Qualifying questions, which can vary, but they're normally whatever your thing you're kind of offering or deal you're trying to do, you're trying to find out if they're a fit for them. So let's say you sell, like in my case, kind of content marketing services. You would ask questions like, so based on your social media, how many times are you posting content a week? And then that type of question helps me, in my specific situation, find out if they are a qualified person. Or you would say something like, so what's your budget right now? Or it would be questions that are based on how, potentially how much this person potentially qualifies to be a potential client or customer or win the deal over with you. There are many types of qualifying questions. I just can't think of any off the top of my head, but the types of questions in communication, there's a variety that, feel free to look up because there's loads. But anyway, I don't want to make this massively long. It's even got dark in the time of recording this as well because it's been nearly 40 minutes. But nonetheless, I wanted to kind of express and share what I've been learning about communication skills with anybody watching this. And I hope kind of things I've been over to do with mirroring, labeling, filler words like, and ums and ahs and pauses are a big thing. And your nonverbal with your posture. Again, if you've got, anxiety and confidence issues with that, just work on the open posture, and taking up your personal space is a really big thing. Just own your space. It's the biggest thing. And then, of course, at the beginning, talking about my own accountability issues, which in the future I will sure talk about in more detail. But it's just a big part of what I think most people think of when it comes to communication, which is just communicating, messaging in general, talking to each other, getting to the problem. So it's a big thing, but all these other areas are a massive part of communication. So yeah, again, I've got nothing to sell you here or anything. I just kind of wanted to show you explain my journey, what I've been learning, and explain the importance of this, because this is a skill that separates the average person that is unaware of this stuff from people that are closing deals every day, and some of them are multi-billionaires and closing billion-dollar deals all the time, and some of them are winning over deals. And it's a skill that doesn't just apply to a billion-dollar deal. It applies to being able to get a discount on a car you want. It applies to getting a better mortgage rate. It applies to just every element of life. Mirroring, labeling, pauses, tone. non-verbal cues. All of these things have an effect on your chances of actually getting a promotion at work, your chances of being able to, you know, be able to appeal to a person's interests so that you can be friends with each other, or to be able to get a job as a whole, or be able to win a deal, whatever it is in life. All of these skills have an effect on you and on other people that you're interacting with. So it's not just, to become the next multi-billionaire or multi-millionaire. If you want a promotion at work, or if you want a raise, or if you want to be able to talk to girls or talk to guys, confidence issues are surrounding every gender. Communication is how you do it. So that's part of my journey. I wanted to share that with you. And I guess the only thing I can really do is, if you do want help with communication, then I'll leave a link to a friend of mine, Keanu's Calendly, I believe he's got a link to, and you can book a free call with him and you can talk about your situation. If you do want help with communication skills, again, no matter what it is, communication is a multifaceted area of our everyday life. So whatever communication skill you want to work on, he'll be able to help you, because he's been studying it for a long time now, and he's got very, very skilled at it, and he's been helping me a lot with it. So yeah, check out his thing if you would like some help with communication skills in many areas of your life, and I hope that helps. So again, I appreciate you listening to me share a lot of what I've been learning and my own story, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.